Hello and welcome to Console Christians, where we are discovering the biblical truths in today's video games. I'm Conrad, and the game that we are looking at today is Moss. And what you have to do in this game is help a little mouse rescue her uncle, who has been captured by an evil force, and you can control both the mouse and yourself. You are in the game as the reader because you're like reading a book, and all this stuff is happening in a book, and you're able to influence some of the things that happen in the story. So that's kind of cool. So here we are in the Meyer Temple, and this is one of the significant buildings in the mouse lands, the mouse culture. I just love how you see there's a piece of the ground missing, piece of the floor. This is all in ruins. There's like rubble all over the place. And here the door opens. You see all this dust come out because the door hasn't been opened in decades. And so you notice that in the mouse culture, it is very mechanically based. You open a lever there to open the gate. There's a little magic we saw when we opened the other door, but it's pretty based on mechanical things. Like even the creatures that you have to fight, they're constructed. And so now we're going to go into the Sprite Lands. So right there, when you saw the portal opening, you might have noticed one of the differences between the Sprite Land and the Mouse Land. Instead of the portal kind of fading into view or just appearing with a flash or something, it actually grew like a plant. So that is one of the things in the Sprite Lands that sets it apart from the Mouse Land, is that everything is a lot more organic. There's a lot more magic as well, and the mechanical stuff is very minor. You see these flower petals falling from the sky. I wonder if those are magical because they never seem to stop. You see little fireflies glowing, making it seem a little bit more magical as well. You'll see these doorways. Usually you have a door with a lock, but instead of having that, they have these branches. And you'll see that the toad is going to wave his hand, and using a little bit of magic, the branches will disappear. But they don't just disappear, they actually grow in reverse. They ungrow. And so we'll see in as we go through the doorway that there is a crystal that you have to hit, and that will grow or ungrow the branches on the door that we have to get through. And you'll see these there's floating rocks here, more evidence of the magical nature of this land. And you'll see on the crystal there's usually there would be a wire, but here we have like a branch that goes all the way from the crystal to the door. So just like the game has different cultures, the Bible has different cultures or nations. The main nation that we encounter in the Bible, in the Old Testament, is the nation of Israel. But there are others who are pretty much the enemies of Israel usually. One of those is the nation of Edom. And we encounter them quite a bit in different books of the Bible. One of those books is Ezekiel. We'll turn there now to the 35th chapter of Ezekiel in verse 1. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, set your face against Mount Seir, prophesy against it, and say, This is what the sovereign Lord says, I am against you, Mount Seir, and I will stretch out my hand against you, and make you a desolate waste. I will turn your towns into ruins, and you will be desolate. Then you will know that I am the Lord. So they talk about Mount Seir there. So that's another name for the nation of Edom. And it sounds like God is not too pleased with them. And it talks about Edom becoming a land of ruins. And so I wonder if when the prophecy comes to pass that Edom might look like the Meyer Temple that we saw in the clip. But there is in fact a entire book in the Bible that is dedicated to Edom, and that is the book of Obadiah. So one reason I wanted to look at Obadiah is because it's not usually something, a book that people know a lot about. Even in the New Testament, they quote quite a bit of Old Testament scriptures, but no one ever quotes Obadiah. So I like these little known parts of the Bible and try to get people to know more about them. So to give you a little background on Edom, if you remember in your Sunday school, one popular Sunday school story is the story of Jacob and Esau. And Jacob is famous for tricking his brother out of his birthright and their father's blessing. And what Jacob did was, because Isaac was blind and Esau was hairy, he put some sheep's wool on himself and made Isaac think that he was Esau because, he's hairy, so it must be Esau. And that did not go down too well for the relationship between Jacob and Esau. It was so bad that basically their descendants were pretty much enemies for the rest of time. And so the descendants of Jacob are the nation of Israel, and the descendants of Edom are the nation of Edom. So let's look in the book of Obadiah here. Let's see what it says about Edom. Let's start in chapter 2. Or not chapter 2, because there's only one chapter, but verse 2. See, I will make you small among the nations. You'll be utterly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you, you who live in the clefts of the rocks and make your home on the heights. You who say to yourself, who can bring me down to the ground? Though you soar like the eagle and make your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord. So we see there that one of the things that God does not like about the nation of Edom is they're very prideful, and they live very high. So they live high both figuratively and literally, and God does not like that, and He says, "Well, that's going to come to an end. I'm going to bring you down. You think you're so high and mighty." And so let's move on to another part of the book of Obadiah. And let's look in verse 12. It says, You should not gloat over your brother in the day of his misfortune, nor rejoice over the people of Judah in the day of their destruction, nor boast so much in the day of their trouble. You should not march through the gates of my people in the day of their disaster, nor gloat over them in their calamity in the day of their disaster, nor seize their wealth in the day of their disaster. So what's happening here is that Babylon had conquered Israel, and they were taking away all the people that of value to Babylon, taking away from Israel, taking away all their stuff. And Edom saw this as a good opportunity, and they're like, you guys got conquered by Babylon. and they saw, oh, there's some free stuff to be had from Israel, so they went down there and took what they wanted. And God did not like that either, and probably from what we've seen so far from Edom, they did not sound like very nice people. But let's go on further. And in verse 15, it says, "The day of the Lord is near for all nations. As you have done, it'll be done to you. Your deeds will return upon your own head." So it's really bad news for Edom there. It's like, if you've done something bad, that bad thing is going to come back and haunt you. But one thing that I wanted to point out there is, it says the day of the Lord is near for all nations. So the day of the Lord, we're getting all these threats that God has given to Edom. You guys better shape up because you're not doing the right thing. And he's saying all these things, these bad things are going to be happening to you if you don't shape up. And the day of the Lord is that point when those bad things are going to happen. But the thing is, it says the day of the Lord is near for all nations. So it's not just the nation of Edom or the nation of Israel. It's like everybody. And so here we have, it's kind of like a turning point in the book. So after that verse, we'll just, let me just jump to the end. And so it says in verse 20, it says, "This company of Israelites, exiles, who are in Canaan will possess the land as far as Zarephath. The exiles from Jerusalem who are in Sepharad will possess the towns of the Negev. Deliverers will go up on Mount Zion to govern the mountains of Esau, and the kingdom will be the Lord's." So we started off with kind of like bad news, like threats from God of how Edom is not doing the right thing. And then after verse 15, we see people of Israel are coming back from exile from Babylon, and they're being able to settle back in their lands that they were living in before. But at the very end, it talks about how the kingdom will be the Lord's. So it's not, they didn't say that the kingdom will be, it wouldn't be the Israelite kingdom, it will be the Lord's kingdom. So that meant that it's not just going to be the Israelites. Like it talks about the Israelites in the verse that I just read. But if the kingdom is Lord's, then the people you can say, well, it's going to be the Lord's people, not just the Israelites, because you don't have to be, right now, you do not have to be an Israelite, you don't have to be Jewish to be one of God's people. You can be one of the nation of Edom, even. Look, I'm not sure, I haven't traced my family lineage back 2,000 years, but I'm pretty sure I'm not part of any of these nation of Edom or nation of Israel. But that's good news for me. Anyone can be part of the kingdom of God. So that's one good point that we can get from this book. The other thing is, you might think, well, a good idea is to think to yourself, how am I like the nation of Edom? And you saw the bad things that they were doing, and you think, well, I'm not anything like the nation of Edom. Well, let's take, for example, a homeless person, because they were thinking that they were all high and mighty and better than everyone else. I think it would be pretty easy for you to think that you are better than a homeless person. So imagine there's a person from Edom passing by a homeless person on the street, and they would probably say something like, "Oh, he got what he deserved." Where So you hear that and you're like, well, I wouldn't think something like that. Well, how about this? How about, well, I'm glad that's not me. And that's certainly something that I've thought. I'm not proud of it, but like other times I've given them food and tried to help them out a little bit. Other times I'm like, well, I have no time for you. Please stop bothering me. And that's unfortunately what the nature that I have within me that's like Edom. But even so, like you saw that at the very end, all the nations would the day of the Lord will come for all nations, and it would be God's kingdom. It would be a kingdom which anybody could be included. So even if you are like the nation of Edom, who's prideful and think they're so high and mighty, you can still be part of God's kingdom. So please come to the Milestone Church's YouTube channel. We have a service this coming Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. I am Conrad, as I said before, and you've been watching Console Christians. See you next time.